Welcome back to HQ. Let's turn our attention to the NFL and talk about J.J. McCarthy. This is where we stood last week with our insider Jonathan Jones talking about the Vikings rejecting trade offers, telling teams they move forward with the team as their quarterback. But there's a guy named Aaron Rodgers, four-time MVP, that's kind of hanging out there. We all know J.J. McCarthy actually broke his silence with Kay Adams talking about his role in the team. Second-year quarterback says Minnesota hasn't assured him of the starting gig this season, and he actually was okay with it, says that he needs to earn it. I'm paraphrasing here. But maybe it is not the job because Aaron Rodgers is indeed floating around. Vikings GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah asked about the former Jets quarterback today.
It's our job as a personnel group to make sure we're aware of every potential option. And again, we're trying to make sure we solve for scenarios that we don't know could possibly happen. We want to make sure that there's competition in the room to make sure that, if you remember last offseason when JJ and Sam were really competing, that brought the best out of both of them. And so you want an environment that's like that, a supportive environment to also just challenge each other but grow and learn and all those different things. And so we're trying to solve for a lot of different things at once. And, from all those conversations comes a list of names and maybe an order and an intentional plan on how to best solve for those things. So, a player like him, he's always going to be in those conversations, but from our delineations at that time, we're happy with where we are going forward. But obviously the caliber of player and just all our suggestions, we had to make our considerations.
It's a good thing we have a GM with us on our roster sitting on our set. Ran Carthon joining us, Mike Renner as well. So, Ran, I need you to kind of translate that for me because obviously Kwesi was kind of talking about due diligence. What did you make of his comments? And is this kind of what the teams do when they have situations like this?
Yeah, well, I'll just say you didn't take J.J. McCarthy at 10 overall to just have him sit for multiple years. Obviously, last year was different. The injury came into play, but now he's healthy. What we believe, because only Minnesota knows where his true health is, but he's ready to go, and I think they will commit to him to be their starter. Don't necessarily need Aaron Rodgers right now to be the backup, and you got guys like Carson Wentz, who has history in that Rams offense, which is what Kevin O'Connell runs, but you have Carson Wentz, you have Drew Lock, you have Joe Flacco, names like that can come into a quarterback room with a young guy and help bring him along.
Mike?
Yeah, I think if I'm Kwesi and I'm looking at this situation, to Aaron Rodgers, I say, if you wanted to just chase a ring and sign for, vet min, real low money, sure, we'll bring you on the fold. We'll let you compete with J.J. McCarthy. But if you want your fair market value, it's like we drafted the quarterback so we didn't have to pay quarterbacks, right? We drafted the quarterback so that we could get that cheap rookie deal and try to shoot for the moon and win a Super Bowl here. And my buddy Matthew Collar of Purple Insider, one of the Vikings insiders, said he was outplaying Sam Darnold last year during training camp. And now obviously the injury throws a wrench into his development and whatnot. But J.J. McCarthy, again, you draft him 10th overall for a reason. I firmly believe they're going to roll with him this season.
Shout out to J.J., by the way. In that interview, I feel like that could have gone sideways in a hurry, but he was very poised in saying, look, I got to earn this job. So shout out to him there. I do, Ran, want to continue the conversation when it comes to Aaron Rodgers because we now, we know that he's also been linked to a potential move to the Steelers. They have the 21st pick this year. They've got Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson, a guy we know very well down here in South Florida. When it comes to Aaron Rodgers from the front office perspective, what's the hesitation? Because you know what you get with him on the field. You know for the most part what you get with him off the field there. Why has this become such a stretched out talking point this offseason?
Well, I think you have to know what you're getting. And if you haven't been in a building with Aaron, you don't know what you're getting from him. You can go with the speculation and what you've heard, and what you've seen on the documentaries and things like that. But you have to understand and know the person, especially at that position, because that is one of the most key positions in the league. And again, we're talking a 40-plus-year-old quarterback, which you can't commit to long term. So at some point, you're going to have to address that position. And then a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who's been a starter, who's been the face of the franchise everywhere he's gone, is he willing to sit behind a young guy? And then you also have to think ahead. What does that do to the young guy, knowing if I don't play well, the fan base and everyone behind me is aiming for the next guy to come up?
Yeah, I think just because it's a necessity, just because it's kind of like last man standing, doesn't mean that's where you have to go if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? You don't just have to sign the vet just because you have that opening. There are a bunch of quarterbacks in this draft. We really only talk about the top two, but it's a loaded day two in terms of quarterbacks. So if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you could do a one-year rental with Aaron Rodgers, or you could just say we're really looking forward to the future and turn your attention to the draft.
And they are my dark horse to trade up for one of these quarterbacks.
Ooh, okay. Picking at 21, we've got him maybe trading up. That's what pays off to have a GM on your side.
Well, I was going to say, because some draft prognosticators had maybe Jackson Dart there coming into the late first round with that pick, but that could be a move that we see there. Speaking of moves, Shedeur Sanders has been interesting because early in the draft process, Mike, he was linked to Vegas at 6 and then make the Geno Smith move, and all of a sudden he's slotted to 3. And yet Joe Shea and company start making moves where they have not one, but 2 veteran quarterbacks in Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson, and yet there's talk of that they could still go rookie quarterback at 3. What do you think?
I think they very well could, and it is, I mean, we just talked about J.J. McCarthy. It's a long-term decision when you draft that guy in the top 10. It's not a start him as rookies. I mean, last year was an aberration with how good that rookie class was. You're not taking a guy usually to win the Super Bowl year 1 or change your fortunes year 1. So if you are, in this position and you have a quarterback on a 1-year deal in Russell Wilson, a quarterback on a 2-year deal in Jameis Winston, but it's for like $8 million. It's really for nothing in terms of quarterback deals. You're more than okay to go draft that quarterback still, in my opinion. We've seen a guy get drafted in the first round and be quarterback 3 for his team as a rookie in Jordan Love just a few years ago. So it happens, and if I'm the New York Giants, that's your quickest path to long-term success, is having all those guys in the building.
Rand, we're talking about trades. Potentially think 3 is what gets it done if you're trying to get someone like Shedeur Sanders, or you think he might slip a little bit to 6 or where?
Like Mike said, I think that he's still in play here in 3 for those same reasons Mike mentioned. But if you're a young quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, what better room to go into with a Russell Wilson and a Jameis Winston? Guys that you may find relatable, guys that have been known to help and bring along people. And so if you're a young quarterback, whomever it is, whether it's Shedeur, Jackson Dart, that's a good room to go into. And if you're the Giants organization, you don't have QB1 under contract in 2026. And so at some point, you have to have a plan for that. You're coaching and working for the right now, but you have to have an eye towards the future.
It's too bad that the Giants were on Hard Knocks and had that big debacle, because this would be an electric Hard Knocks. You tell me Shedeur Sanders, Jameis Winston, and Russell Wilson in the same room, that would be must-see TV.
You stole my fire. I literally have Prime Junior, Mr. Unlimited, and Mr. Personality. That's a heck of a quarterback room up there in New York. But hey, it's got to translate to wins here. We're certainly used to seeing the Patriots win maybe in the past. The last few years has not been good up there in Foxborough. They did solidify their wide receiver room. They brought in Stephon Diggs, so I'm excited to see that. But Mike, if you are the front office there, what's the next move in terms of the draft? They pick 4. Ryan Wilson has them taking an offensive tackle and Kelvin Banks there, but what do you think? I'm signing an offensive tackle before I even get to the draft. They already signed Morgan Moses on the right side. The name that I love to fit for them is Jedrick Wills, the former first-rounder who obviously had so many injuries over the course of his career with Cleveland. He could be like this year's Mekhi Becton, where he's kind of a reclamation project. You get him for 1 year, sort of prove-it deal, just to give yourself some options and depth there. So if number 4 is sitting there and there's a player you love, say Abdul Carter falls to you at 4. Are you going to draft an offensive tackle then instead of Abdul Carter? No, you want Abdul Carter at that point if you're the New England Patriots. So I think you got to give yourself options, and I think that starts with using some more of that space, not signing another big money free agent. They've done enough of that. A budget guy, Jedrick Wills, the one I like. More important for a big name player or an offensive lineman to protect your quarterback, Rand?
I mean, you have to protect the quarterback, and that's what our league is about, protecting the quarterback, keeping them upright. I think Drake May showed off his elusiveness and his ability to run, but I'm pretty sure Josh McDaniels will want him to stay in the pocket as much as possible. But if I'm the Patriots, if I'm Elliott Wolf, if I'm Mike Vrabel, at this point I'm just sitting still. You have 9 picks in this draft. You have 4 in the top 100. I want to lock in and focus on those picks. And again, this is a new regime. This is Mike coming in, bringing his vision, working with Elliott for the first time. So I'm locking in, focusing on the draft.
Which is interesting, just to follow up on that, Ryan, because of the situation that New England's in. They have draft capital. They had cap space. They tried to spend as much of it as they could. They got pretty darn near close, and they still have a lot left to go. The Diggs move here, what do you think that pitch was like to Stephon Diggs to say, hey, come back to the AFC East and join us in what we're trying to do out in Foxborough?
I mean, if you're Stephon Diggs, a veteran receiver who's coming off a torn ACL, and you have a contract in front of you for 23,
it makes it a little bit easier to do.
It's not hard to turn that down, if you're Stephon. But I can understand what they're doing. They're bringing another veteran presence in there to mix in with a guy like Kendrick Bourne, who's been there, who's been trying to help bring these young guys along. I'd like to see them add some more speed so they can create more explosives with Drake May's mobility to create shots downfield.
Okay. All right, Rand, Mike, certainly appreciate it. Always keeping tabs in the pulse of what we've got going on in the NFL. The NFL, the NBA, the NHL, all of it. It's all here and it's all free. CBS Sports HQ, we've got you covered. And with the first pick, Ran and Ryan Wilson and guests like Mike Renner. Scan the QR code, check them out, and of course, we're less than a month away from the draft.